Hello, and welcome to Mullen's Benefits Companion, a podcast that helps employers navigate the complex legal challenges of managing their employee benefit plans. I'm your host, Brydon DeWitt, and today we'll be discussing ERISA COVID-19 timeframe extensions. Last year, in light of the pandemic, the Department of Labor and the Internal Revenue Service issued relief to ERISA plan sponsors regarding the timeframes for certain elections and notices. This relief paused the deadlines for ERISA notice and disclosure requirements, claims procedures, COBRA elections, HIPAA special enrollment elections until the announced end of the COVID-19 national emergency. So essentially, under the guidance last year, time stood still. So if you had a COBRA election period of 60 days that occurred last year, the 60-day period did not begin to run. It was simply paused. We are basically in a timeout. And this extension or deadline delay under the relief issued last year was to last until 60 days following the announced end of the COVID-19 national emergency. And when this relief was issued last spring, it was anticipated that the national emergency could end in the summer. It's hard to believe at this point, looking back, but when this relief was issued, some of the examples even assumed that the national emergency would end in the summer. Of course, that didn't happen, and almost a year later, we are still in the middle of the COVID-19 national emergency. This has caused problems because ERISA and the Internal Revenue Code only permit the Department of Labor and the IRS to extend deadlines for 1 year unless the deadlines are extended by the president 90 days before the end of the 1 year period. President Trump, however, did not take any action. So the relief provided in last year's notices from the Department of Labor and the IRS expired on February 28th, 2021. And so benefits professionals were pretty concerned as February moved on and we approached the February 28th, 2021 deadline that nothing had happened and that we were not sure what would happen to these timeframe extensions. And it really literally the last minute, the Employee Benefit Security Administration issued Disaster Relief Notice 2021-01. And this notice provided that plans and individuals subject to the relief issued in 2020 will have the applicable periods continue to be disregarded until the earlier of 1 year from the date that they were first eligible for relief under the 2020 notices, or at the end of the 60 days following the end of the national emergency. And so what this means is that the pause in the deadlines under ERISA, HIPAA, COBRA will apply going forward on an individual by individual basis. Each individual will have a 1 year pause in that individual's timeframes. And so the Department of Labor in the notice provided the following examples. If a qualified beneficiary would have been required to make a COBRA election by March 1, 2020, the election deadline is now delayed until February 28th, 2021, 1 year. If a qualified beneficiary would have been required to make a COBRA election notice by March 1, 2021, the new relief delays the deadline until the earlier of 1 year from that date, March 1, 2022, or the end of the outbreak period, which is 60 days following the end of the national emergency. If a plan was required to provide a notice or disclosure by March 1, 2020, the relief for the notice disclosure would expire on February 28th, 2021. So again, this means that each participant and beneficiary and plan is operating under an individual by individual time frame. Plan sponsors must determine when the 12-month period will expire for any disclosure or election delayed under the 2020 notices. And disclosures and elections are back on the clock as of the 12th month following the date they were delayed under the notice. And so to give you some additional examples of how this works, suppose a 60-day COBRA election period would have commenced on March 1, 2020. That 60-day period will now commence on March 1, 2021. So it doesn't mean the beneficiary has to make the COBRA election on March 1, 2021, it means that the 60-day period will now begin on March 1, 2021. If a qualified beneficiary's COBRA election period starts on June 1, 2021, the election period will be paused until May 30th, 2022, and the 60-day election period would begin on June 1, 2022, provided that we are still in the COVID-19 national emergency. So the good news is there's still relief, that the deadlines for elections and premium payments and notices from plan sponsors continue to be delayed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The bad news is that plan administrators now have to keep track of these deadlines on an individual by individual basis. This obviously is a bit of a complicated topic, and we have published an employee benefits alert going into more detail about the recent notice and relief from the Department of Labor, and that can be found at williamsmullen.com/employee benefits. So that'll wrap up our discussion about time frame extensions due to the COVID-19 pandemic. If you have any questions or suggestions for future episodes, please contact me. You can also visit our employee benefits page at williamsmullen.com/employee benefits. There you can find out more about our team, as well as past episodes of this podcast and legal alerts. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast to be notified when our next episode posts. Thanks for listening.